Welcome back to the Player First YouTube channel, where we put players' needs first and help them make the best educated decisions on reaching their full potential as athletes. So, second episode, going to talk about something I think that will set the stage for a lot of the episodes down the road. And I put out that Monday Minute asking that question: are you a participator? Are you a competitor? And we'll probably dive into some of the responses, some of the feedback here later. But let's dive into that a little bit more. So let's define our terms. Participators. What are they? Who are they? What do they do? What determines their actions? Is it good to be a participator? Is it bad to be a participator? So let's start off with there is no good or bad. I think that what leads to the connotation of good or bad is probably the friction and frustration that arises between player, coach, and parent. And I talked about that in our first episode, where those are kind of the three entities that we'll talk about a lot. Is the interaction between those people leads to a lot of decisions that could be good or bad. So the good or bad is really determines your, from what perspective you're coming from. And I'm a coach, so there's certain things that I deem as good and bad, and as a player, you deem things might be the opposite, right? And so a participator. I'll give some examples. I think a participator is somebody who just plays their sport. Think about when you're younger, your rec league, and I don't want to say like rec league can't be competitive, but I want to say more so you're just playing it because it's fun and it's that time of the year and you're with your friends, and there are other things that are driving you to be there that might not directly be related to that sport. You could get them elsewhere, like camaraderie, for example, like hanging out with your friends. You could do another activity. You could go and hit up the skate park, or you could be in a book club, or you could be in a hiking group or a biking group. I don't know. There could be another activity that gives you that social component that you're looking for. And I think that's a strong piece in that participator world, is that you're there because that's the thing, right? I would say, your participators are the people who also do what is asked of them, or does the minimum required amount of work. And that doesn't mean that participator might be talented or untalented. You have some very talented athletes who do the bare minimum, but they've been gifted with some physical or mental or emotional talent that, who knows how they developed it, but they have it and they're really, really good. So let's use a really, really stupid example. Basketball players. You could just not like playing basketball, or you just like showing up, but you're actually really, really good because you're 6'8", right? Track and field. You could be somebody who just absolutely flies and you're just faster than everybody. You have really good times and you compete and you're out there, but it's not like something that you wake up every single day thinking about. I think the participators are also the ones that typically don't like practice. Again, that bare minimum component. You think practice is dumb. You just want to play in games, which again is totally fine. If you only want to play in games and you're a participator, there's probably a component in this where maybe the first topic of frustration is if you're a participator and you only do the bare minimum and then you don't like losing and you get frustrated with losing, like that leads to frustration as an athlete. That leads to frustration for your parents. That leads to frustration for coaches, because it's like, man, you are saying you care about winning and losing. You say you care about how you play and how you contribute to the team, but you do the bare minimum. You're just showing up, going through the motions, but then you get really mad with the outcomes, right? And I think this will be a later topic that we'll go over, is I think that those athletes are probably a fixed mindset athlete, and meaning like they just think this is as good as I can get, and I will, no matter how much hard work I put in, like this is as good as it gets, and I might as well do the bare minimum because it's not going to it's not directly influencing my playing time, my performance, all the above. So that's, I think, another component of the participator. I think the participator, if we want to shift from like, okay, what are their actions? Let's go from an observational standpoint. So from a coach, your participator is probably the person, I think that maybe they're the glue of the team. They can sometimes be that morality booster, the clown, the jokester. They could be sometimes a distraction at practice, because if they don't think practice is really valuable, people aren't going to put effort forth in stuff that they don't deem as valuable, but it might be a distraction to the other athletes who are trying to get better. From a coach's perspective, the participators are kind of low on the totem pole from like getting playing time, unless they're like super, super talented. Like coaches, I think the perception from a player standpoint is, oh, coach doesn't like me, and they play favoritism. Well, it's hard to negate, just that's human condition, right? You root for and you hope for the people you like, and the people you don't like, you're not going to do that for them. So from a parent's perspective, I don't have children, so I probably can't speak to this very much, more so anecdotally from observations of different family dynamics. I think the parent, they probably have a level, if they're fine, at the younger levels, they're fine with participation, and we're just exposing them to different sports, and they're having a good time and with their buddies, and that's the social component. But then there's that desire, if your child is somewhat talented, to then put them into a more competitive league, put them onto a more serious team. And if your child is a participator, like, they're not going to put the extra work in. They're not going to get the reps. They're not going to, put in the extra time that coaches want them to do. And that could lead to frustration where, again, as a parent, it is okay if your child just wants to participate. There's a lot of opportunities for players to just play. I think probably the main theme that we have here is the gap that gets created between like participating and playing, or competing and a competitor, and then the work ethic and all the things that go around becoming a competitor, and then ultimately reaching your full potential. Where if you're a participator, the reason it's totally fine is maybe you have something else that drives you, something else that you find more fun. Maybe it's music, maybe it's art, maybe it's schoolwork, maybe it's, I don't know, something else that you're like, I wake up every single day and I love this thing and I love doing it, and I love putting the work in outside of what's kind of the minimal requirements. And if that's the case, like, dive into that and be straightforward with your parents and with your coaches. And maybe when your parents like, oh, maybe we should go and instead of doing this team that kind of fulfills some of your personal needs as an athlete, let's go to this more serious team. And it's going to cost more money, and there's going to be more time, and it's going to be more pressure. Maybe that's another component that might fall into that participators. Like when the game's on the line and your team needs you, like, if you had a choice, would you give that responsibility to somebody else? As a coach, I've seen athletes do that. As an athlete, when I was playing, when I was younger, I would pass the ball if I didn't want the ball. Because it was like, man, I don't get anything out of this. Like, it's just going to be an opportunity I saw it as an opportunity to fail and look bad versus an opportunity to go out and win and take my team and help them achieve their goal. So that's kind of the definition of the participator. Let's dive into the competitor, and I think this will be, and then we'll finish with kind of like the gap that gets created. So your competitor, these are super simple. These are the people who are really, these are probably the people who are naturally really good at their sport. But then I would say, like, the difference between a competitor and somebody who's talented is a competitor is doing something every single day to get better. It could be training, it could be practice, it could be swinging the cage, free throws on the court, conditioning. It could be mental reps, like, it could be like, I want to play on every single team, which I think can be a bad thing sometimes. But like when there's a team like, oh, we need a guy, like, oh, I'll play, like. You're a competitor. Like, you want to go out and you want to be the best possible athlete, and not necessarily just your sport, quote unquote, because usually your sport, again, is where you have your natural talent. But a competitor wants to be the best at anything and everything that they do. And I guess that's the reason I want to start here with this topic. It's because some day sports will stop. and you as an athlete will then move on to the next endeavor. And if you understand the difference between that participating versus competing, I think that will allow you to make an educated decision with sports currently, but then also with your next thing. Because, you could have the choice of getting if you're a participator and somebody gives you an opportunity to be like a CEO or start your own business or something that has a ton of responsibility, and you're like, oh, I don't really want to do this. Like, I just want to clock in, clock out. Like, I want my paycheck and go home and not worry about work. Like that, if you said yes to that because you felt that pressure to do it, that could lead to a lot of frustration down the line. The other side of that coin, if you are a competitor and you're in that clock in, clock out, I don't have much influence on my work or what I do and how much money I make, you could be somebody that like might be really frustrated with just the clocking in and clocking out, right? So I think all these topics, they start with sports, and that's why I want to talk about it, because you care about that right now, but in the future, that sports are going to end one day. So I think the frustration that gets created is when you have an athlete who is doing and faking all of the stuff that's required to be a competitor, and is in reality a participator. From a coach's standpoint, those are the players. Like, I probably was this athlete when I was younger. Oh man, this kid's got a ton of potential. He could be really, really good, or she could be really, really good. And they don't put in the extra reps. They don't put in the time. They don't put in the effort. They go through the motions of practice. They don't take their training seriously. They don't take their diet seriously. They don't take their sleep seriously. They hear it over and over again from me as a parent, and I get frustrated because I want my kid to be successful, quote unquote. And that leads to me getting frustrated as a parent, because man, I'm paying a lot of money for you to do all this stuff, and you're not taking advantage of those opportunities. And then it all circles back to the athlete, who then is left there having these two entities screaming at them or yelling at them or being stern with them or saying like, man, you could be so good if you could just do all this extra stuff. And it's like, in the back of my head, it's like, well, I don't really care about that stuff. I want to do this. I want to do that. And so that's the conversation that you need to have first and foremost with yourself. Am I a participator in the sports or the events that I do, or the activities or extracurriculars that I do, or am I a competitor? Am I looking to be the best I can possibly be in chess club, in my coding class, in my music class, in track and field, soccer, baseball, softball, whatever it may be? If you're a competitor, you are also you will get frustrated also by those participators. And so finding the right team, finding the right organization, and coaches that help foster competitors and give them the tools to achieve their goals, and in all reality aren't held back by those people, that's the organization that you need to find. So once you have that conversation with yourself, figure out where you're on that scale of participating versus competing. Have the conversation with those specific entities, coach, parents, friends, family, where you say, hey, this is where I'm at with this particular thing, and here's the effort and time and hard work I want to dedicate to this, but to this other thing that I care about even more, I want to start giving more time and effort into that, because in all reality, if you're more passionate about something and it's like an obsessive type thing, you're going to be better at that in the long run. The last thing I'll caution you with is, do not put yourself into the participator category if you don't think that you can be good, quote unquote, at your event, sport, whatever it may be. Everybody has the opportunity to be a competitor. Everybody has the tools that are out, the tools are at your fingertips. It's called your phone and Google, to figure out how can I get better at whatever I'm passionate about. I want to make, that's probably the last thing I'll leave you with, is figure out, make sure you aren't a participator because you think that this is as good as I get. So leave you with that. Hope it leads to some great conversations and it allows you to remove some frustration from your life, and ultimately reach your full potential as an athlete.